All right, so we are now live. So welcome, everybody. I am your host, Lucia, and today we are exploring the ocean by the seat of our pants. So this Friday is World Oceans Day, and what better way to celebrate than having a whole week full of Google Hangouts with some leading ocean scientists and explorers from all over the world. Today we have classes joining us from across Canada and the US, and we are all hanging out with Jennifer Stock here. She is an education and outreach coordinator who works for NOAA's Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary. Now, her job is really important because it's helping bridge the gap between the scientists and everyone else, basically letting us know what the research is, what they're working on, why it's so important to our oceans. But not only that, she's been on some pretty exciting expeditions to some of the deepest parts of the sanctuary over in California. But that's enough of me talking, so why don't we switch it over to you, Jennifer?
Thank you. Well, hi, everybody. It's so nice to be talking to you via the internet to Canada and in the United States. And I'm really excited to share some of these awesome findings with you today. And this is such a special week here in the United States because we kind of call it World Oceans Week leading up to World Oceans Day on Friday. And it's such a special day for us to really recognize and tell more and more people about how important the ocean is. So I hope today you'll learn something new and share it with your family or friends at the end of the presentation or at the end of the day. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you can see my presentation, and I'm going to go right into it.
Perfect. Looks good.
So I am going to talk about today some of the deep sea exploration that we have done in the Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary, and I'll orient you to where that is at. I am the education and outreach coordinator for the NOAA National Marine Sanctuary, and NOAA is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. We're a federal government agency that is about the ocean and atmospheric sciences. And within NOAA, we have the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, which is a system of special places in the Great Lakes and ocean to help protect them for future generations. And so my job as the education and outreach coordinator is really diverse. I get to do a lot of different things between developing education programs and teacher trainings and curriculum and exhibits and signs and films. And really, ultimately, what I consider myself is to be an ocean translator. And I translate all the science and policy to everyone else because most of us really don't have these opportunities to get out on the ocean. And so I like to be the ocean translator. It's super fun. So National Marine Sanctuaries, actually, I want to just give you a little history about where they came from in our country. Protecting special places is something that started in the United States as early as 1916 when the National Park Service was born. And this is when we started recognizing there are special places on land that we wanted to protect, either geological or biological or cultural, and having history to save that we really wanted to share for everybody. And that started way back in 1916 and actually really was a stimulus for other places around the world too to start creating parks in their countries. But we were a little slow to catch on to the importance of the ocean, and we didn't start protecting special ocean places until 1972. And that's when the National Marine Sanctuaries were born through the National Marine Sanctuaries Act, which is setting aside special areas around the United States that have special biological, cultural, or maritime heritage value. And so that's both in the ocean and the Great Lakes. And so the National Marine Sanctuary Program was born in '72. And currently, this is a map showing you where all of them are. And we have a couple on the East Coast. We have one in the Gulf of Mexico. We have a couple in the tropical Pacific and one marine national monument, the Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument. You're going to have a quiz on that name later because it's so much fun to say. And all of these places just have something unique and special about them. On the West Coast, we have 5 National Marine Sanctuaries. The Olympic Coast is off of Olympic National Park in Washington, and then we have 4 in California. And I wanted to share this circle with you just because we're going to talk a lot about the significance of this West Coast of the United States. This system is very contiguous from all the way up to Alaska down to Baja, and is really one of the most productive in the world. So each of these national marine sanctuaries have special things, either being a breeding area for seabirds or a feeding area for whales, or special places for sea otters and other unique things and cultural values. And so there's so many different colors and flavors to national marine sanctuaries, and each one is really special and totally open for all of us to enjoy and recreate, but also for us to explore and learn about so we can best protect it. So back to the West Coast, we're going to focus in a bit about why this area is so special. So this map shows you 4 arrows where there are currents. And these are called eastern boundary currents, which are currents that have a lot of food in them based on all the dynamics that happen in the water system there. And so we are in the California current. These 4 major areas on our world ocean are some of the most productive in the world, meaning they have the most food. And so in these 4 regions, we provide about 20% of the world's seafood catch in the world are caught in these 4 areas. And that's less than 1% of the total ocean. So that just gives you an idea of how rich these areas are. There are a lot of areas in the ocean that are kind of desert-like and don't have as much food, but these 4 areas are very, very high in biodiversity, lots and lots of life. So they're so productive. We have animals that will fly thousands of miles to feed here. We have the seabirds that come up from New Zealand and Chile. They come all the way up from the southern hemisphere to eat on the west coast here. Leatherback sea turtles will cross the entire Pacific Ocean from Indonesia to California. Blue whales and humpback whales come all the way up from Costa Rica and Mexico and so on. And this map illustrates that the animals know where the food is, and so they will risk thousands of miles of swimming or flying to get here because the food is guaranteed. Here's just a snapshot of what that all looks like. So it starts with the phytoplankton at the very bottom of the image here on the bottom right. And those are microscopic little plants. And those are food that become available to the zooplankton, the animal plankton. And then the whole food web takes off from other invertebrates, fishes, seabirds, highly migratory seabirds, and whales. And we even have white sharks, the top of the food web here, as well as orcas that come by and eat because there's so much food. So that's all on the surface, but we actually have an incredible deep sea environment too that is below the surface that is very much hard to see and hard to appreciate. And it only is through technology that we've started to examine what is down deep on the deep sea floor. Deep sea communities along the West Coast provide habitat for fish and invertebrates, and we hardly know anything about them. We've only just started to learn about them in the last 10, 15 years or so with the use of remotely operated vehicles and technology. So these deep sea communities have deep sea corals, and I want to just give you a little lesson in the difference between shallow corals and deep sea corals. So this is an image of a shallow water coral. It's a beautiful tropical light blue water in the sun. And these are corals that rely on a symbiotic algae inside their skeletons that actually photosynthesize. They use the sun's energy to make food, which brings food into the coral, and then they get a place to live in exchange. And so those are shallow water corals, typically in warm, warm water. And that is not what we have here on the West Coast, because we have deep, cold water that's way away from the sun. And so these deep sea corals, they don't have that symbiotic algae. They instead rely on whatever drips by, and they have little polyps that stick out to capture food. Some of the corals that are a little bit higher up in the water column might catch zooplankton, but the ones that are super deep, over 1,000 feet, really are relying on what we call marine snow, which is all the stuff that drifts down from the surface waters down to the bottom. So they really depend on whatever is going on up above in order to eat. So deep sea corals are found all around the world in temperatures down to -1 Celsius or 30 degrees Fahrenheit. We know of about 3,000 species of deep sea corals so far, and new ones are being discovered every year with more exploration. They can be extremely long-lived. One colony of deep sea coral was found to be more than 4,000 years old. So these specimens have a lot of stories to tell and are really important for scientists to study because they have been recording all the oceanographic data in their skeletons for their life. So a species that's 4,000 years old, scientists can actually study to understand what were the ocean conditions like 4,000 years ago and what has changed over time. So really important organisms for us to learn about before we lose them. So getting closer to the Cordell Bank Sanctuary, this is about an hour north of San Francisco in California. And along the coast, we have the Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary, which comes all the way out around the Farallon Islands and all the way up to Point Arena. And Cordell Bank is totally offshore and right in between and really protects some unique seafloor features that are unique to this offshore environment. So our mission at the sanctuary is to provide comprehensive and coordinated conservation and management of the resources within the sanctuary. And so in order to do that, we have to know what's there. And when we look out on the ocean, this is what you normally see. It's really hard to know what's there when you have this watery environment on top of it. We can go on boats and we can study from shore, we can use satellites, but you have to get below that surface in order to really understand what's on the seafloor environment. And most of our area is pretty far outside of scuba depth, so we really need to use the technology. But before you can go out with a camera and a remotely operated vehicle, you have to know where to go because it's expensive to get out on a ship. We have weather that we have to deal with. And so we want to be as efficient as possible and plan our trip, know where to go. So how do we know where to go? We do seafloor mapping. If you imagine taking off all that water off of our planet, the whole planet Earth has just as much contours on the ocean side as it does on the land side. It's just covered up with all the water. And so we have to use mapping technology to picture what the seafloor looks like. And we do that with this technology called multi-beam, which is sending down little sound waves to the seafloor and measuring the rate of return. And it makes a map showing us what it looks like. So this is an example of one of the maps. And this is what we call bathymetry, which shows us how deep areas are. So this red area is the shallowest area on the continental shelf. And as the colors get to orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, it goes to deeper and deeper areas. So that shows us the bathymetry. Another image that it can give us is what we call backscatter. And it's kind of hard to interpret this, but you can kind of see this little skeleton through those letters there. And those are areas that show where there might be hard substrate. And hard substrate is rock. And we want to know where the rock is because that's what animals attach to, such as deep sea corals or sponges. They need to attach to a rock in order to live because otherwise they're trying to live in shifting sands and mud and it doesn't work for a lot of these species. They need to be attached. So studying those areas to know where the rock might be and also looking for the slope. We want to see how steep the areas are because there might be vertical walls in these steeper slope areas. So all of that is first, you have to have all that information before you can go out and explore is you have to know where is it likely that we're going to find some cool stuff. So last year we had an awesome opportunity to work with Bob Ballard's group, the Ocean Exploration Trust, and his vessel, the exploration vessel Nautilus. And we got to go to some areas of the National Marine Sanctuary that we've never seen before. So we got to go into these areas that are in light blue to explore the areas we've never seen. So we use this remotely operated vehicle, the yellow one on the right, and that is tethered to the ship with a cable, and that brings a live video feed to the ship. And this specific ship actually beams it to the internet so people can watch from home, which is really, really cool. This is the ROV close-up where you can see lots of cameras and sensors. There's lots of tools for collecting specimens. Sometimes we want to collect a specimen to identify it. So many of these species in the deep sea we haven't identified, so we want to collect some of them to identify them. And this is what it looks like. To get eyes down into the deep sea, this is giving us a picture of what is this environment all about. You can't really study it without seeing it. This is what it looks like in the ship. We're in a cabin where the stream is, and there's lots of video screens and showing us the live feed of what's happening 1,000 feet below us. We're able to watch on the screen and be connected to people. This was with a very fancy boat, the exploration vessel Nautilus, and it's not always quite this fancy, but it was super awesome and efficient and a great way to collaborate with people on land as well. You might see, I'm going to show you a little video in a little bit, and you're going to see these lasers. And these lasers are used to measure things and to also tell the distance from us to the organism itself. So you're going to see a little bit of that. So I want to show you this little video, and it has some audio to it. This is available online as well, but this is a great capture of the whole expedition that we did with the Ocean Exploration Trust last year.
Bodega Canyon, that's about 50 miles northwest of San Francisco, completely in Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary. There's a beautiful octopus.
He's on the run.
Look at all the sediment that's got on him.
Oh my goodness. That's wild.
That's gorgeous.
Oh.
Good morning.
Oh, very nice. Wow.
You can't push core here. I won't let you.
That's my
What you doing?
sediment.
That is awesome.
Hello.
Oh,
Nice little skate.
oh,
Nice.
it's
Hello.
pretty.
That is a he.
How can you tell that it's a male skate?
It has the little claspers on the tail. On the tail.
That's a sea pen with a brittle star on it. Yeah.
They just get that there because it's probably more food, or
Yeah, it's a better efficiency for feeding because it's up high above the substrate, so you're not in the current getting more food that way.
Oh, that's snailfish.
Is that right in front of us?
Yeah.
All right.
It's pretty.
Look at that.
Oh, look up.
what?
Look up.
I think he might be busy eating. Is he eating? Or is he just kind of holding on?
So it's not. Yeah, that's a good one.
The Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary, a lot of the sea life is so rich because of this upwelling. These cold waters from the deep rise up and meet the warmer waters of the surface. And this variation in water temperature allows for phytoplankton to thrive and larger organisms to feed off that. And so this marine snow created by those organisms to fall down to the depths, which gives rise to all these deep sea ecosystems, which are nourished by energy in the marine snow and plankton that's falling in front of the camera right now.
Wow. Oh my God. See, that thing has been around.
Oh, look at that. Wow.
Look at those legs. Looks like a daddy long leg of the deep.
I just found on a NOAA website that sea spiders usually are found in the deep, and they can grow quite large, expanding almost 3 feet.
Wow, that is massive. Oh, there's so many sponges on our overhang. Yeah, I love that Picasso
That's
sponge.
a nice clean. And there's a little guy, a little flatfish right there too. Yeah, a little
Oh, did you see that? Oh.
Like so tiny.
that fish is big.
It's a nice size fish.
Yeah.
It's like
So
40
2
or so.
dorsal fins is a sablefish.
So it's a sablefish?
Excellent. Yeah, let's
Oh, that's such a good
Perfect,
shot.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good
Good
jelly. Yes.
Hello.
Beautiful color.
Oh.
Look at that. It looks like a little hat.
Oh.
Showing off.
Showing off.
You're
So pretty.
beautiful.
So that's just a great overview of some of the cool things that we got to see down there. And here's just a close-up. We saw a lot of different types of octopus. The Dumbo octopus, they kind of look like an elephant. And we saw lots of beautiful deep sea corals. That's a big bamboo coral that's highlighted there. Pom-pom anemone, the sea spider, lots of different sponges and urchins. And it's just an incredible diversity of corals and invertebrates, and sometimes very interrelated. You can see that brittle star that's hanging on to that sea pen, and it's basically using it to get an advantage to catching food. And then we saw some different types of vertebrates and animals with backbones of different fishes, and we saw a cat shark, which is a deep sea species that is sometimes seen on the West Coast. So why is all this so important? We were so excited to discover and learn about this part of the sanctuary we had never seen before. It was really outstanding. We thought we know so much about our place, but we didn't at all until we got to go see it. And in order to better protect a place, you have to know what is there. So studying it is really important in getting a better idea of the types of habitats that are there. New species were discovered. We have collected some samples, and it takes about a year to actually get them analyzed. And so far, we know that we discovered 2 new sponges. Those were sent to an expert who was able to identify them, and we found that there are 2 new species that we didn't know about before. So it just tells you there's so much more to explore in the ocean. And then helping to increase the appreciation for the interconnectedness of the ocean environment by sharing it with people. With that specific expedition, we were able to share it live, but also by having the opportunity to share with you and with others with the video footage and the photos really helps people get a better understanding of what do we have right off our own coastline right here. We're concerned about deep sea communities because there are threats. There's changing ocean conditions with warming waters and warming temperatures all around the planet, and carbon dioxide being absorbed by the ocean. Fishing gear in certain areas are pretty destructive to the seafloor, as well as gear that accidentally is lost. All of this can really show up and cause some destruction to the deep sea environment. So these are things we really want to know more about in terms of the threats to this area. We want to protect places and for people from being harmed by the issues that are facing our environment. And so we all have things that we can do every day, no matter where we live, if we're near the ocean or not, to help take care of the deep sea and the ocean. And the number one thing is we really want to reduce how much carbon dioxide we use. We want to reduce our use of energy and find ways to use energy in a more sustainable way. We want to support marine protected areas and national marine sanctuaries that help protect special places. And there are organizations all around the world that are working to help protect special places in the ocean. And getting connected to them, whether they're local to you or nearby in your state, those are great organizations to learn about and support so you can learn about what's happening to help protect the ocean. And lastly, one of the biggest problems we have in the ocean is plastic is getting into the ocean, and it's because we're using too much of it. And so if we can reduce and refuse the single-use plastic that we use, like forks and straws and wrappers, and really cutting down on that, that is another great thing we can all do to help protect the ocean. And individually, we can all make a difference, but together, when we all do these things, it really does make an impact. So that is what I had to share with you today, and I think we'll have some time for some questions. You can follow more about our sanctuary at this website, and we also have some social media channels on Twitter and on Facebook, and so you can sometimes see some great photos there. But I'd love to take some questions.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. We'll go around. Thanks for that great presentation. We can go around. We'll start with Ms. Roy's class. If you guys have a question, you can come up to the screen.
Questions? No.
Or have no questions.
Yeah, she can hear us right now.
Well, back to you guys. If you think of questions, we can take.
Their brains don't move as fast in the afternoon.
Okay, that's fair. All right, so you guys mull it over. Think of some questions. Then we can answer the questions that Ms. Gray's class has typed in, which is, are the deep sea communities in Cordell similar to the ones off the Olympic coast in Washington?
That's a great question. From the imagery that I've seen, I think there are some similarities. Last year, we had the opportunity to work with the exploration vessel Nautilus, Bob Ballard's ship, and he also went to Olympic Coast after visiting us. And I watched some of the video, and yeah, they have very similar deep sea coral communities up there as well. So yeah, I think they do. And one of the amazing things is we want to know more about what's in between. We just got to see these little spots along the coast. But can you just imagine what else is out there in between that we haven't seen yet? So it's pretty exciting to see that stuff.
Awesome. And we'll move on to Ms. Baraya's class. You guys have a question? No questions? All right, so you guys, if you think of one, we'll come back to you. Let's go on to Miss Dillon's class. Do you guys have any questions?
Yes, we absolutely do.
Awesome.
All right, so go ahead, Cadence.
Hi, my name is Cadence Jacob, and this is my question. How does our trash that we make get to the ocean?
Excellent question. So we live on land, and all around us there are streams and rivers that drain into the ocean. And if trash gets on the ground, most of the time by accident, it could blow to the river or the stream, and then eventually will go down the watershed all the way out to the ocean. And that can start all the way in the middle of the country, way away from the ocean, and travel to a stream into a river, and then travel down to the ocean. And so by not taking care of our stuff on the ground, all of that stuff could eventually make it down to the ocean. So we really need to figure out ways to keep our stuff off the ground and to just use less stuff so there's less trash overall.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So move on to Miss Biffret's class. Do you guys have a question for us?
Ew.
Yeah.
Okay, no other question, right?
Hi, my name is Agul, and my question is, why did you choose to become a biologist?
That's a good question. Well, you know what? When I was a kid your age, I loved going to the beach and exploring outside, and I love nature. And ever since I was a little kid, I just loved being around animals and exploring. And I went and studied biology in college, and then I really discovered that I loved talking about nature and sharing about it with kids and with other people. And so I started doing education, and I was doing environmental education and realizing that I just love doing that. I also worked as a park ranger for the National Park Service doing the same thing. And then I was able to come to the National Marine Sanctuaries and bring that, which was awesome because it paired my love for the ocean with education. I went back to school and got a master's degree in education when I started my career with NOAA because I really wanted to understand more about the education system and how we can do better at bringing the ocean to classrooms like you. So I actually did my master's of education a little bit later in my life. So that's kind of my path that I've taken so far. And what I think is the perfect combination for me is I love the science and I love the biology, but I really love sharing it. And so it's the perfect blend for me to be able to work with our scientists and learn from them and help share it with everybody else.
Thank you.
Now, Miss Advani's class, do you have questions? Could you hear that? Could you repeat that? Make sure you speak really loud.
Did we see any seals?
Eels? Eels, I think.
Eels. Did we see any eels? I don't believe we saw any eels, but you know, we do have the monkey-faced eel in some of the shallower waters of Cordell Bank. Or not the monkey-faced eel. Is it the monkey-faced eel? We have a funny eel with a funny face, and I can't remember its name. But we do have some eels in the shallower environments on the West Coast, but not in the deep sea. We have seen hagfish, though, and hagfish look kind of like eels, and they're down in the deep sea.
They're a lot slimier, too.
Yes.
Miss Roy's class, did you guys come up with a question?
Yeah, my kids thought of a question. We are doing an animal rescue class right now. We just watched some documentaries on sharks and shark finning and longline fishing. And the grade 8s wanted to know how often you encounter sharks during your job.
So the Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary, we've seen a couple sharks. I've seen blue sharks before, and there's salmon sharks, but because we're not on the water all the time, we definitely don't see all the sharks that could be there. Closer to the coast here, where we are north of San Francisco, though, this is an area known as the Red Triangle. And it's because we have a very significant white shark population that lives in this region, but mainly near the coast out to the Farallon Islands and then down south a little bit to Año Nuevo, because there's a lot of great food for them. The elephant seals that they love to eat go to those areas, and so that's what the white sharks come around here to go for. We don't see them so much offshore at Cordell Bank. They might pass through. There are scientists that tag sharks and actually study where they go by the telemetry, by this tag, and we know that they like these hot spots based on those tagging studies, but not so much at Cordell. We have a couple other sharks that kind of pass through out at Cordell Bank, but it's not something we see very frequently.
Yeah, thank you.
Then we have Miss Gray's written question, which are, how are the Hopkins rose nudibranch populations in California right now? That's very specific. I like it.
Well, that's a specific question, and I'm not so sure I can answer it, but I do know that that's a species that they're studying with global warming and climate change, because it's a southern species that likes warmer water, and it's starting to be showing up north, further north than it ever has before. So that is a species of, not necessarily of concern, but a species that the scientists really want to study, because it's kind of an indicator of how our intertidal area may change over time with water getting warmer. So I don't know much more beyond that, but I do know that it's one of the species that's showing up in further north latitudes based on the warming waters.
Awesome. Now, Miss Aria's class, do you guys have a question?
Wait, what?
Do you guys have a question for us? No? All right. Well, we'll move on.
Mention one thing. The students in Oxnard, you guys are super close to the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary, which is right off the coast of Santa Barbara. So you should check them out. They are out at the Channel Islands, and they work closely with the national park, and they have amazing things that you can see and do at some of their visitor centers. So check them out if you haven't heard about them yet. The Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary.
Awesome. Then we can move on to Miss Dillon's class. You guys have another question?
We do.
What is the most unique experience or animal that you've seen?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I will say last year, the expedition with the Nautilus was one of the most unique and rewarding experiences for me, because I got to participate as part of the science team as an educator and communicate live during the expedition to audiences online. And also we did a couple interactions where we were doing what we're doing today, but from the ship. And it was really rewarding to be sharing the excitement of the discoveries at the time. In terms of one of the most unique things I've ever seen in the ocean, I think it was those cool sea cucumbers. Did you see that little video, those sea cucumbers that were kind of clear with those little tentacles all over them? I was wondering what those were, and they're a type of sea cucumber on the deep sea, and I thought they looked like aliens, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Miss Bifford's class, do you have another question for us?
Yes, we do. Yes.
We're going to type this one.
Okay. All right, so we have, hi, my name is Marvelous, and I'm wondering why we call the ocean the ocean.
Why do we call the ocean the ocean? That's a great question. I have no idea. That's such a great question. Who named the ocean the ocean? I don't know, but I know that it's 3/4 of our Earth's surface, so it's pretty important to study and to appreciate its value in our lives. So if you find out that answer, please let me know.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've never thought about it. Miss Advani, do you guys have a question you would like to ask? So make sure you speak up nice and loud. very faintly, so make sure you're really loud. Can you repeat your question? Something about animals in the water. Can you maybe type in your question into the chat box? It might be easier because it's very, very faint. And then we have, do you feed the animals in the water? That was our question.
It's not a good idea to feed wild animals in the water. It's not a good idea to feed wild animals anywhere because they're part of an ecosystem, and the natural balances of predator and prey are important to be carried out on their own. And if we disturb that balance by feeding them, we could make them sick and make them vulnerable to disease or predation. So we definitely don't feed animals in the wild, on land, or in the ocean.
Awesome. And we have some answers in our chat about why we call the ocean. So Ms. Dillon says it's from Middle English, from Old French ocean, via Latin from Greek okeanos, great meaning great stream, encircling the Earth's disk. The ocean originally denoted the whole body of water regarded as encompassing the Earth's single land mass. And then Ms. Gray adds that her students say that the ocean is named for the Greek god Oceanus, who is a Greek personification of the ocean. So there we go. We have a lot of different answers, all stemming from the Greeks. So there we go. Perfect. Everyone working together to answer the questions.
I remember hearing about that. I didn't know which one came first. Ocean or Oceanus? Okeanos.
So I think we have time for one more question from every class. So Miss Roy's class, do you have a question?
So, my class was wondering, we're still thinking about predators in the ocean. If we had no predators in the ocean, how would that affect the rest of the planet?
If we did not have predators in the ocean, what would that look like for the rest of the planet? That would be really interesting because predators keep everything in check. And if we didn't have any, we would probably use up all our resources that are lower on the food web really quickly. So predators are a very important part of the food web in the ocean and on land, keeping the balance of all the levels of the food web together.
Awesome. Miss Barria's class, do you guys come up with any questions? Yes? Ooh, we got one. Are you?
Has the machine that you take pictures with ever snapped?
There are definitely problems that happen in the deep sea, and a couple things that have happened before is that you want to stay away from dangerous things. So we ran into a little bit of derelict fishing gear when we were down there, and like a net that was kind of strung up in the water, and the ROV pilot was like, whoa, and started back paddling, because if the ROV got stuck in that net, it would be gone. So we have to be really careful and know our surroundings. And so the lights are really important, as well as the GPS and tracking. Sometimes there are problems, that goes under extreme pressure. So they have to plan the technology around that. Instead of using water inside to fill the pressure, they use an oil, like a vegetable oil, so it's not dangerous, to keep the hydraulics working at depth. But sometimes those things fail. We had one dive where we took about an hour to descend to the seafloor through the water column, and then when we got there, a line blew and we had to go back up. So we lost a couple hours of dive time because then they had to fix everything. So yeah, things happen. And what's really great is there are people that can go to school, and you could go to school for marine technology, and there's great careers in learning how to build this technology, learning how to fix this technology, and in creating new technology to do all these cool underwater explorations.
Awesome. Then we have Miss Gray's class asking, where did you go to college?
So when I was an undergraduate, I went to the University of Delaware. I grew up on Long Island, New York, and I went to the University of Delaware. And then my graduate school, I did at Dominican University in California, which is about an hour away from here, north of San Francisco.
Awesome. And I see we have Miss Dillon's class ready with a question. All right, go for it.
My name is Hannah, and have you ever been to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch? And if you have, what does it look like?
Really great question. You know, a couple of years ago, I did get to sail with the folks that really discovered the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, the Algeta and the Algalita Marine Research Foundation. And we sailed to Guadalupe Island to help study these laceland albatrosses. And I was working on all this albatross curriculum because we have a lot of albatrosses that visit the Cordell Bank Sanctuary, and it was an amazing opportunity to learn more about them. And so I got to talk with the people on the boat that had been discovering the garbage patch. And the things that I learned about it are, I've never personally been there, but it's the entire Pacific Basin. We have what's called a gyre, and the way the currents work, it kind of works in a circular pattern. And so the current comes down the coast, and then it goes across the equatorial area, then it comes up Japan, and then it comes around. And that whole system is called a gyre. And just like at the bottom of a bathtub, when the water starts circling around to go down, things get concentrated in the middle. The same thing is happening in the ocean with the debris that we've been putting into the ocean. It kind of gets concentrated. And it's more like a soup. It's not just the surface waters. It's also in the midwater as well. And this is just from the years of putting too much into the ocean. And we need to figure out ways to prevent it from getting in. The garbage patch is very loosely defined. It's very big and broad, but it's not a very specific geographic area. So I've never been to it, but I have been in the ocean swimming or snorkeling and diving and seeing plastic in the water. So that's not good. So that's why one of our biggest things we really want to ask everybody to do is figure out ways that you can make decisions to not use single-use plastics and use reusable stuff. I have a water bottle that I carry with me everywhere, so I never need to use a single-use water bottle. We're really lucky in our country that we have laws that have basically allow us to have access to clean tap water. And so refilling at the tap is the way to go to refuse using single-use plastic. So that's one of the best things that you as students can do to help protect the ocean is to keep those plastics out of the ocean by not using them altogether.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. Plastic's a big problem. So one of our classes just left. And they thank you. But we'll move on to our final question from Miss Advani's class. So hopefully we'll hear it. If not, we can also type it in. So give it a shot. Kind of. Try speak really loud.
Okay. How many sea sponges have you seen, and are there any more sea sponges?
Did you hear that one?
How many sponges have we seen, and are there any more?
Yes.
Oh gosh. So I think we've probably seen hundreds of species of sponges in the Cordell Bank Sanctuary, and they come in all different shapes and sizes, and they filter the water, they suck in water, and they eat plankton and detritus in deeper environments. And there could be more. You know, when we go down to explore, we basically just get to sample and look a little bit, but there's so much more that we haven't even seen. So there very well could be more sponges or corals or other invertebrates and fishes that we haven't even seen yet. So that's why we want to keep exploring so we can learn as much as we can about our precious ocean.
And I think a good final question would be, what is your favorite animal that you've encountered in the sanctuary?
Well, there's two. And so I really am intrigued by seabirds because they have a tough life. They live their entire lives out on the open ocean, and they have to survive the wind and the waves, and they have to find food. And so to me, seabirds are just so incredibly strong to me, and their survival is just such a wonder for me. And so I'm really intrigued specifically by the albatrosses, because they're just so fun and charismatic, and they're huge. They have this 6-foot wingspan. So that probably is my favorite. But the second would be the blue whale, just the largest animal on the planet, and seeing one in the ocean, it's like seeing a great highway of blue go on by. They are just so big. And thinking that they eat the tiniest critters, these small little krill, as their food is just mind-boggling of how much they have to eat. So if you have a chance to get out on the ocean, keep your eyes open for seabirds, keep your eyes open for dolphins and porpoises. A lot of these things you can see right from shore. You just have to get there and keep your eyes open.
Awesome. That'd be amazing to be able to see a blue whale in the wild. That's my dream. But thank you for taking the time to spend with us here, Jennifer, on our World's Oceans Week hangouts that we have going on all week. I think we all definitely learned something, and we can all do our part to help protect our oceans. We have Google Hangouts still happening the next 2 days. And remember, World's Oceans Day is on Friday, so I hope you guys have some great celebrations planned. Are you doing anything special for World's Oceans Day?
Yeah, so we're working together with Point Reyes National Seashore to do a bunch of programs out at the Point Reyes Lighthouse, which is right overlooking both national marine sanctuaries. And we're going to do some extra special programs to talk more about the ocean. We're going to have some live plankton to look at under a microscope, so people can learn about that. It's hard to understand the things you can't see, so we're going to try to bring those things to everybody on World Oceans Day. And I hope you guys do something special too.
Yes, for sure. So I can unmute everyone. You guys can wave goodbye or yell goodbye. However you'd like.
Happy summer, everybody.